quarterfinal number 4. Let's go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's time for quarterfinal number 4. We have one more ticket left for the Shanghai Championship for the Americas region, and it all comes down to this last match, Admiral.
Yeah, Kuonet versus vcT. One of these two is going to round out the Americas spring qualifiers for Shanghai, China. I do want to say that I'm so happy for Ant that he made it to this point. I experienced the wrath of Ant.
He beat you.
In 2014. He killed me on turn 3 with a lot of Soulfires when it was 0 mana and Power Overwhelmings and Leper Gnomes and whatnot. It was a very quick match.
There's a lot of history in that match as well, because I was casting that match. That was my first official Blizzard event that I was casting, the online portion of that Hammerstein Ballroom America's Championship in 2014. Pretty crazy to think that we've all been around the scene all the way back since then, and now Ant finally gets that big break. But here's the bracket currently in the 3 players that are in the semifinals going to Shanghai. Muzzy, Diego Diaz, now Ant. Who's going to join those 3 as the final player? Is it going to be vcT from Brazil, or is it going to be Kuonet from the USA?
Yeah, now from the USA. Actually, recently moved here from Taiwan, I believe it was.
Yes.
He's been having quite a performance for himself as of late. This is a very tough opponent for vcT. It was actually in the Japan Major. Kuonet started out 0-1 and then put on 8 straight wins to make it through to the top 8 of that event. And this one, he didn't quite pick up his first loss that early on. It was in round 5 where he lost to Diego Diaz. And vcT, similar fate. He started out this event 2-0, third round, Diego Diaz lost the round. Yeah, he's qualified through. Both these guys lost to him. Who's taking the other round?
Yeah, we're going to have another South American, another Brazilian representative at the Spring Championship. vcT, a player that's been around for a long time, very successful in Copa America events. He was actually a caster at one of the first Brazilian championships to go, all the way back to 2015. And he's a prominent writer as well for the Brazil community. So definitely a player that has a storied career in Brazil, but can he translate that to the world stage is going to be the question here.
Yeah, he's been looking for it for a while. He was at all the prelims in 2016. He was qualified for the winter playoffs in 2017. He was top 8 of Copa America in 2017. And you mentioned him being a strong player. Historically, he's got a 63.6% win rate with Paladin over the course of 1,096 games. And you can take a look right there for yourself. Paladin is in vcT's lineup.
Oh, yeah, it's in the Zoth Paladin. So taking a look at these lineups, you can sort of tell that vcT has, I would say, a slight edge. He's basically got control decks that are slightly slower than the control decks from Kuonet. The Zoth Paladin usually has the edge versus traditional control Paladin. And Jade Druid, which will probably be banned away, but it does have good matchups against almost all of the decks from Kuonet. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. These control matchups can go either way because of how long these games go, but usually the greedier player comes out on top.
That's the nature of the slower matchups, is when you think about aggressive strategies, you typically want to be one step ahead, but the nature of control decks is that they're fairly responsive. So if your opponent's playing a giant threat and you're playing a slightly slower, more giant threat, that is a very big problem for the player who has the slightly smaller threat in that instance. It's the opposite of what you typically see in some aggro matchups.
But, we've talked about favored matchups all throughout the weekend, and we've had a lot of upsets when it comes to lineups being favored over one another. It's even when you're talking about these control matchups, there's even like one tech decision can make the difference. The way you play the matchup can make the difference. If we look back to the first quarterfinal of the day, which was Stark versus Muzzy, Stark had like an overwhelming lineup advantage against Muzzy, lost 3-0.
It definitely happens. It's any given Sunday in a Hearthstone tournament. That's part of the beauty of the game, is that anyone can win at any single time. And it boils down to, a lot of times, the decisions you made outside of the game.
Yeah, and of course, again, 3 players now booked their ticket to Shanghai. This is going to be the 4th and final player to join the list of already an incredible field of players that we have. So that championship is going to be coming up pretty soon after the APAC playoffs next week. So we're going to Shanghai. Let's take a look.
The Hearthstone Championship Tour is heading to Shanghai for the Spring Championship. China's biggest city will host 16 worthy qualifiers from the playoffs. They'll be competing for the title of Spring Champion plus a spot at the World Championships. It's Hearthstone in China, July 7th through July 9th in Shanghai.
And there they are getting ready for their match, Kuonet and vcT. Admiral, I actually had the chance to go to Shanghai last year for the Karazhan release. And that city is massive, and it's got a lot going on. And I can tell you, the Hearthstone fans in China are very passionate. It's going to be intense.
I can't wait to go.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful.
It really is. And not only that, but this is going to be, you know, one of the first times where we have, like, you know, besides the World Championship, BlizzCon, pretty big audience there, which is going to be intense for these players. We talk about big stages. They're in pretty big stages just being on this stream, but they're in taverns. When they make that trip to Shanghai and get on a huge stage, it's going to be different. But let's get into it. Game number 1, Kuonet versus vcT.
Yeah, and this would be pretty much the first time Kuonet's been to a major stage like that. This is actually his first playoff appearance in HCT.
Yeah, it is.
He was top 6 actually at the APAC Winter Preliminary a while back. It was a double elimination format for that one. That's why it's classified as top 6. But for playoffs, this is his first rodeo.
Yeah, that was a sort of a much, you know, smaller, I guess, event for the scale of it. You know, back then we split up the regions into a lot of different places. So the APAC Winter Prelim, but now he's in the Americas region, and we'll see if he can defeat a South American player to get to Shanghai. And right now it's going to be sort of the Gunther Mage versus the Gunther Mage. Gunther Mage, Burn Mage, Discover Mage, Good Card Mage, as I like to call it.
Whatever you want to call it, it's definitely got all of those things in it. This matchup can boil down to giant value battles a lot of times, but what it really is to me is a setup to pop the first ice block. That is a big factor of this game. But there's a lot of small mini battles that take place during that. Number 1 is the amount of chip damage you can take early on to have your opponent not have to play their own Alexstrasza offensively. That can be a tool in defensive grindy battles where a player is expending burn and Alexstrasza allows to heal back up in those situations. vcT having the Arcanologist early is a major benefit from him. Not only is he pulling secrets out of his deck, but he's also forcing action from Kuonet in these spots. You know, typically when you think about this matchup, it's the major endgame threats like Medivh and Kuonet's hand that provide that big presence. But Gluttonous Ooze already in the hand for vcT, a very popular choice in this deck. That's a key card for this matchup. If Kuonet cannot get any substantial value from that Medivh, it ends up being a major detriment because he's invested so much mana.
Yeah, now I want to take a second to talk about some of the key differences in these guys' lineup. And the card that stands out to me in vcT's Mage is an Eater of Secrets, which he has a 1 of in his deck. That could be a huge card in this matchup, because if you can get your opponent low, combine that Eater of Secrets with some burn, you can go for that instant kill on your opponent in a situation that they wouldn't expect. Now, Kuonet knows that that's in there, but sometimes it's very hard to play around.
It's a very difficult card to play around. In my mind, vcT doesn't even necessarily need a lethal setup for that card to be a major impact. As I mentioned, it's somewhat of a race to pop the first ice block. A lot of times just taking out an ice block somewhere along the way can be a big benefit. It's one less turn that Kuonet gets to unlock the full potential of his deck. So vcT drawing and landing that card is almost always going to be a major difference in the game, regardless of where it is.
Yeah, now the strategic use of it often comes in too. You know, sometimes you play it on curve, but a lot of times you want to save it for that kill turn, because having that surprise factor or just having that moment where your opponent doesn't have a chance to play around it. Say they have an ice block up and they have the second ice block in hand, you can make it so that they never even have a chance to play that second ice block because you kill them the turn that you eat that secret.
Definitely true. Another difference is the Elise Trailblazer in vcT's hand. That is not found in Kuonet's list. Instead, he's got a second copy of Volcanic Potion. That's a major difference where the long-term value battle is concerned.
Sometimes these matchups come down to long-term value advantage, but I feel like oftentimes they don't. Now, one of the reasons why they do is because these decks just pack a ton of removal, a ton of situational cards. They don't really get blazing fast starts on the board unless they have like those Mana Worm, Arcanologist into just crazy spell turns, but we'll see if this one's going to come down to that long battle. But oftentimes you can just see things start to pick up quickly once you get to that turn 8, turn 9, when you're talking about Medivh the Guardian and Alexstrasza coming out.
Oh yeah, it's big haymakers.
They make hay all over the board.
Something like that. Kuonet faced with a tough spot here as well. I mean, just the fact that that Elise is a 5/5 is, I think, a big talking point in this match. Oftentimes, this particular Mage deck can struggle around the turn 5, turn 6 area. It wants to respond to the board and kill your opponent's stuff, but this isn't the matchup where he really wants to be spending fireballs to take care of minions. This is a matchup where every piece of burn that's expended is a crucial piece that you don't have later on down the line.
What cards you get from Primordial Glyph can also be a big deal. If you can generate additional value, pick up a Cabal Stone, perhaps, with that Primordial Glyph. Pick up some extra burn. Perhaps an Arcane Intellect to draw some more cards.
All those are viable options. You know, the idea of combining Meteor on a certain turn where you can generate tempo is also a thing, but in this matchup, there's only a few large threats that either player is concerned with. So the natural removal that they have with Meteor, with Polymorph, etc., is usually enough to get the job done. This second copy of Primordial Glyph here really not providing strong options for vcT. Maybe Vaporize down the line can keep a giant minion from attacking, but the rest of these cards, pretty sunk.
Sort of the reason you mentioned before, one of the things about this deck is that it does lack those big minions. So oftentimes, Vaporize, you can isolate a minion. Goes with Arcane Missiles, opts to try to hold on to the Frostbolt.
It's a fairly aggressive use with the Primordial Glyph, but I don't really mind it. Again, that little bit of chip damage does matter over time. If he can get Kuonet into a dangerous situation, it means that Alexstrasza can play a defensive role. And that's something that you can't really do if you don't have that major damage coming through over the course of a number of turns. It'll have to be used as damage in that spot. So the tech choices here, I think, were largely impacting the way that vcT is playing it, knowing that if it turns into that grindy style of battle, that the advantage is on his side.
Taking a look at vcT's run here. Not a lot of huge names that stand out. VLPS is a player, I mean, lost to Diego Diaz, as we mentioned, both these players did early on. But he's been on a roll. His last 3 matches in the final 3 rounds of Swiss, a 3-1, a 3-0, and a 3-0.
It's good for your confidence.
It really is. You feel like you're on fire.
Important thing, too. Last thing you want to do is think about what others are thinking of your play. You want to focus on the game and know the decisions you're making are the ones that need to be made. And that's a big pickup for vcT in this pack. I mean, even down to the Iron Hide, the 1-mana gain 5 armor, is a tool in this matchup that you typically don't have. Earthen Scales to go along with. That's a lot of extra life that vcT is looking at this game.
Yeah, now as far as like heavy hitting cards, didn't really pick up any Calamos. I don't think he's going to be able to find an activator for that. Trying to think of any weird situation that could happen where he does.
It would be a discovered card into, say, Flame Geyser to make an elemental. A very weird situation would have to happen for that card to be active, but at the end of the day, is an 8-mana 7/7.
Sure, I'll take it.
It's an Atieshless Medivh.
Ravasor run as well. Just a special shout out to him.
You look like Ravasor, right? You know that?
So I've been told. I do have very dinosaur-esque features and very red eyes.
That's true.
Ooh, big game hunter, not the greatest of outcomes.
I think
this is Firelands Portal.
I think this is likely to merit the same response from vcT when he picks up Firelands Portal, though. It is still a minion that attacks for damage. Those require attention in these matchups. You know, if he wanted to tank a few points here, just hero power over the couple turns, but it's going to hurt the way his turns end up panning out. Can't be targeted by hero powers or spells is very strong in this matchup.
Got to get through it the old-fashioned way. Can't even ping it down with the big game hunter attack.
It doesn't stop Medivh's Valet. That is an interesting point to note. That effect can still target it. It won't stop the splash from Meteor. But Fireball, Firelands Portal can no longer be pointed at that minion. And this is oftentimes where this matchup ends up. If neither player can get significant pressure, it turns into a spot where you're looking for that big tempo turn, force some action from your opponent, and capitalize on the fact that something's missing.
A game? So kind of you to join me.
Medivh the Guardian. One of the biggest cards in this matchup.
It's about to turn into a War Golem. Oh, this is a clever use.
Knows the Gluttonous Ooze is in the deck, so decides to get through that minion the old-fashioned way.
That was a very clever use of the Atiesh from Kuonet there. The damage that he's taking, I'd say at this stage is largely irrelevant. He's pretty much gotten past the point where that damage is going to be super relevant, but he is losing the tempo here. Meteor crashes down and take out Medivh, and Kuonet will once again have to pay attention in some fashion to these minions on board. You can't let him keep going, but he's got plenty of answers to handle this.
Phrase that we like to throw around really often, Admiral. It's called chip damage.
I'm listening.
Nope, that was it. He's getting in chip damage.
It's true.
Chip damage matters.
If your minion attacks and then it gets killed, you got something.
Yeah, a wise man once told me that chip damage matters, and that wise man was every single caster and every single pro player in the history of Hearthstone.
Amen, brother. Mind Vision is an interesting card.
Soul Skull Sorcerer.
You know, you don't typically think of Mind Vision as being a playable card, but in this situation, Kuonet can not only get, he might be able to snag some information about the Ngoro pack. Since we're in the late game, vcT might be holding on to something that could make a big impact in this situation. Kuonet finds Ironhide. So a bit of information, but this has got to start to worry Kuonet at some point, because he's starting to lose the value battle, and he knows that vcT has the long game if that's the case. He's already lost his Medivh, doesn't really have the reach with just Alexstrasza and Burn. He sees the Ironhide that's there. He knows the Eater of Secrets is in vcT's deck. Where does he find an Assault?
It's gonna be tough, and the Eater of Secrets is picked up. I would like to know how many games vcT's won over the course of the event with Eater of Secrets.
I'm curious about that too. You know, all things considered, it's a pretty bad card, but bad tech choices have very specific uses for them, which is when the situation arises, it suddenly becomes massively powerful. It's a high risk, high reward style of card.
Yeah, and one thing that, you know, we haven't really pointed out too often is the fact that it's also got some game against Paladin. Not necessarily as much game, but Hydrologist is in every Paladin deck. I don't think there's a single Paladin deck that does not run Hydrologist at the moment. So it's a lot of times in both Mage and Paladin, it's gonna find some use. How effective that use is, still a question mark, but in this matchup, should be able to win him a game.
Yeah, vcT has now put the test to Kuonet. This Alexstrasza coming down is a major point of the game for Kuonet. He has to find a way to start stabilizing. He has to find a way to force vcT to answer what he's doing. He can't continue to wait forever, but if he doesn't have the right cards to add to the situation, he doesn't really have much of an option other than to play defensively and hope vcT doesn't have the gas to get through it. So this is a very long road for Kuonet to find an advantage from this spot. He's down on life, he's down on cards. Fairly soon he'll be down on board.
And he's gonna cast a Spellbender here. Spellbender does not protect against damage to the face. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we move forward. Spellbender, did come from a random effect, so vcT does have to do sort of that due diligence in his head to try and run through the possible secrets that it could be. And even just that secret being active. No matter what it is, it's gonna change the course of how vcT is gonna play his turn.
Yep, and I think this is the right timing for Eater of Secrets in this game as well. It's being buffed up a significant amount in this situation. It's making sure that he's not playing into Mirror Entity if he casts Medivh or casts Kalamos in this spot.
Ooh, that's an Arcanologist. So Kuonet, taking a look at his deck, he does have one copy of Ice Barrier and a second copy of Ice Block in his deck. So what this Arcanologist picks up could change the way this game plays out. If he picks up Ice Barrier, it doesn't protect him from that burn.
He's in a heap of trouble.
Yeah. Just a lot of situational stuff here. Again, having to expend burn on an Eater of Secrets that's already worked overtime in this match. Picks up the ice block.
It's a nice draw for Kuonet, actually, because now if vcT goes to pop an ice block, say he just spends turns launching burn at Kuonet's face, the Ironhide also makes a large impact. He can play Alexstrasza and then Ironhide back behind that and set himself up to 20 over the course of a couple turns. So vcT, I think, is going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. I think he's going to have to get some minions on board to pressure Kuonet and hope that the removal's not there. But this is what we saw in the early game with vcT pressuring Kuonet has started to come into play for Kuonet instead. My question is this too late?
The Diva Guardian looks pretty appealing here.
I wonder.
vcT knows this secret could be one of two things at this point. And he also knows the Gluttonous Ooze is there, so I can imagine he's going to try and get immediate value, at least a little bit, with this Frostbolt.
Whoa!
Pyros!
That is huge for vcT. Not only is his deck built to win these long game battles, but now he's got another tool generated from the Atiesh that Kuonet is going to have a tough time handling. Over the course of its entire lifespan, that is 18 power and 18 health that Kuonet has to handle.
You talked about how vcT may need to do this the old-fashioned way with good old minion pressure, and Pyros is just about the best way that you can do that at this stage in the game.
vcT also swung with the Atiesh in this spot. He knows that the copy of Gluttonous Ooze in Kuonet's deck is likely to be there at this point. He's only got 7 cards left. So if that's the case, take that extra point of damage.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's the difference of Fireland's Portal and just the Pyros popping an ice block in this spot. You know, the extra armor that he gains off of that. He's now got a perfect pot with Fireland's Portal, Hero Power, and Pyros, or he could use Earthen Scales, or he could use Ironhide in this spot. This is a wonderful position for vcT. Oh, doggy.
And now the Armorsmith. I'll take it. Alexstrasza most likely going to have to come out defensively here, but this looks like an almost impossible situation for Kuonet. Both ice blocks gone.
He's losing Alexstrasza as an offensive tool. Since he's the one who's more under the clock than vcT is, having to use this defensively doesn't mean near the same impact as it typically would if vcT was doing this.
Solid Meteor positioning. A+.
Meteor positioning 101 with Kuonet. And Meteor usage 101 with vcT.
Haymakers, am I right?
You are. And that's extra armor from the Earthen Scales as well. Not only because he's getting it from the power, but that extra damage means an extra armor.
Yeah.
I think vcT's got it. He has all the tools necessary
no.
to keep a stranglehold on this game.
Mana Worm picked up.
It's one of the worst draws in the deck at the moment. But
it is.
Frankly, TJ, I'm not sure much gets him out of this situation. Medivh is gone, Alexstrasza's gone, and as you mentioned, ice blocks are gone.
I think he's got a Primordial Glyph.
No, oh, that was vcT who using both early on.
I think Kuonet has one Primordial Glyph. He's got an Ice Barrier in the deck.
It would take a miracle, I think, for Kuonet to find himself winning game 1.
This Mana Worm's going to have to live for 20 turns.
So is Kuonet.
Which one's more likely? I don't even know.
Whew, that is a rough set of turns. Oh, Pyros is an elemental.
He can get the Calamos. That's how he gets the Calamos activation. That's an additional 6 burn to the face.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Let's count the damage. Pyros lives. Oh, let's not count the damage. Kuonet taps out vcT takes game number 1.
Yeah, a very decisive advantage just from the deck building standpoint. And those are always big things to look at, the tech choices that players have made for tournaments. And seeing how all the lineups were for the players across America's playoffs, his lineup has been built very well for what the field was this weekend.
It has. Now, we talked about mid-range decks as sort of the decks that are going to destroy all these control decks, but basically what vcT did is he took those control decks, he just took it a step further. Slipped a Cannon and Zoth into his Paladin deck. Slipped a couple more late-game tools into his Discover Mage deck. Popped Jade Druid into his lineup.
It's going to hurt your ability to combat aggro at times due to your consistency, but if you're expecting control matchups, his goal was to have game against aggro plans and then to dominate those control style matchups with his greedy choices. And it's just a beautiful thing to see. You know, those are the two things that really prey on control. It's either the mid-range decks or it's the more greedy control decks.
Yeah. So as these players get set up for game number 2, the playoff action does not stop this week with the Americas. Next week, we're going to have the Asia Pacific Spring Playoffs, where the last 4 spots at the Spring Championship in Shanghai are going to be given up. So take a look at where we're headed next week.
Coming up next weekend, across the ocean we go to the other side of the world, Hearthstone's Asia Pacific region. The best players in Asia Pacific will gather to begin their quest towards the Spring Championship. Among the world-class field are Samuel Tsao of Taiwan. A great performance in the Bahamas earned him a berth at Worlds.
I did it.
Now he's looking to qualify for his 2nd straight seasonal championship. Tom 60229 of Taiwan. After just missing qualifying for the Winter Championship, he's #1 in points this spring.
Tom 60229 has a long storied history.
And B787 of Japan, an emotional Winter Playoffs performance
B787 by the skin of his teeth
earned him a trip to the Bahamas. Now he's eager to take it to the next level.
I'm trying to step it up each time. So my next goal is to make it to Shanghai.
The Asia Pacific Winter Playoffs, next weekend on the 2017 Hearthstone Championship Tour.
Really looking forward to how the meta is going to evolve next week. B787 is a player to watch if there's going to be another control meta. He's a control player.
Certainly is. My thing I'm looking forward to is just Pinpingo. Anytime I get a chance to see him in action.
Anytime I get to see those khaki pants pulled up just a little bit too high and those plaid shirts, Pinpingo is a beautiful specimen of a Hearthstone player.
He's got a larger-than-life personality.
He really does. He really does. Looking forward to that one. But back into this match. Trip to Shanghai on the line. vcT versus Kuonet. vcT's got the 1-0 lead, but still a control versus control battle is going to come at us with both of these players basically having only control decks left. So we're going to see who's going to be able to take it.
It's going to largely come down to tech choices, I think, as we saw in game number 1. But here, number 2, Kuonet finds his advantage in this matchup. This is one that's very difficult for vcT unless he's able to have a safe life total and get Sulfuros online at the right time. And that is a tall order. A lot of the cards in his deck are reactive. They're defensive cards. Things like Brawl and Sleep with the Fishes, not really at maximum value in this matchup. The threats from Kuonet are going to come one by one. His goal is mostly to draw cards, build up a big hand of burn, and then find the critical turn to land Alexstrasza or Medivh the Guardian, start cranking out threats and delivering damage. So if vcT is going to win this one, he's going to have to find a way to get aggressive at some point.
It's a tough one. We've seen it go both ways, though, throughout the course of the event this weekend. Taking a look at vcT's tech choices, he does have what we've seen to be the Taunt Warrior deck that has come out on top as far as versions go, which is the double Dirty Rat, double Brawl version, which out of the players that made it into the top 8, the majority of them that did have Taunt Warrior in their lineup brought that style of Taunt Warrior. It's great in the mirror matchup, which I think is one of the reasons why that has sort of been carrying itself through into the top 8. But against Mage, I'm just not sure. Yeah, you can sometimes pull out some key minions and be able to brawl them away, but the deck really lacks in minions. If you can pull in an Alexstrasza, though, at a key time, you're basically gaining yourself 15 health.
Yeah.
Or, 10 or however much over the course of the game, And you can remove that threat so you play it on your time instead of allowing your opponent to play on their time. So does have some uses. Not too much in this matchup as opposed to others. We'll have to see how it plays out.
vcT looking a little bit nervous.
I'd be nervous too, man.
I've been watching his camera throughout the last couple turns, and he's a bit fidgety. He's taking deep breaths. This is a big match for him.
I'm nervous.
And now I'm nervous.
I wonder.
Just made everybody nervous. For no reason. Congrats.
No problem. Arcanologist. His 2/3s look a little bit worse when you're staring at a Fiery War Axe. That's one of the major cards for vcT that allows him to keep a healthy life total, is be able to cut down the minions that Kuonet plays early and then get his own action on board. A card like Ally Armorsmith is a lot harder to contest if Kuonet does not have a single point of damage to add to a Fireball, or a way to tack on more when he casts a Frostbolt or a Firelance Portal. When vcT found this Ally Armorsmith off the Stonehill Defender, this is exactly the kind of situation he's looking for, where he's able to get a small nominal threat in play to increase the clock from Sulfuros, and at the same time stabilize his life total. It's one of the most important cards in his deck versus Kuonet, if it's able to live. And right now, Kuonet does not have an effective answer to an Ally Armorsmith. This could spell trouble.
Yeah. You can see the stat there, vcT, 5th straight playoff appearance. All 3 last year and both this year. Now, Kuonet did have some experience across the Pacific in the Asia-Pacific prelims, but still, not quite as much experience as vcT, who's been playing competitive Hearthstone since like the end of 2014.
It's been quite a long time. vcT gonna go with Ravaging Ghoul in this spot. It's a card that's not super effective in this matchup. So I like that he's getting the threat down, but he's eyeing his curve a lot more than he is just simply the Ally Armorsmith being very effective that turn. He wants to land the turn 5 Ally Armorsmith into Coin Curator on turn 6 is what it looks like to me.
Heads up play. You want to pose those threats. You don't want to let the Mage get on the board and be the one dictating the board state. You want to force them to remove your threats. So that way, once you get to that turn where you can play the Sulfuros, well, you can start chipping away at that 30 health total.
I'm not certain what I think of the Ravaging Ghoul in this spot. It opened him not only to a Secret plus Medivh's Valet, but it also opened him to the Blood Mage and Volcanic Potion. So he gets a coin for his efforts. He takes up Kuonet's turn. But this is the territory where if Kuonet had Fireball, he'd be able to negate that advantage from Ally Armorsmith.
I think what vcT is doing here, I think he's just playing his own game. I don't think he is worried about, what's in the hand of Kuonet or what can punish him in these situations. A lot of times against the Discover Mage, you have to, if you want to try and account for things, you have to account for variables that you don't even know, with Primordial Glyphs, with Cabal Courier. He's got so many cards in his hand that it's impossible to get a read on what your opponent might have, aside from the secret that was picked up from Arcanologist. So I think what vcT is trying to do here is just present the threats, play his own game, respect his curve, and try and win that way.
It's definitely an effective game plan. A lot of times when I play any sort of deck that has a big driving force to it, that's something I do, is I simply ignore what my opponent's game plan is, and I force them to react to me. That's exactly where vcT is headed this game.
And holding on to Coin for Curator does have a lot of value. The faster you get Curator out, the less likely you are to, say, draw that Direhorn Hatchling off the top, make Curator less effective.
It's definitely true, but this also is now a direct play into Flame Strike. That's a factor that maybe vcT didn't account for in this spot. That is a beautiful Flame Strike for Kuonet. But vcT does have initiative. That is really a big talking point for him. He's gonna go with Dirty Rat right into Kuonet's turn 8, and he snags Medivh from the Dirty Rat. That's a 7/7 on board, sure, but that Atiesh is long gone now.
Yeah. Now, one thing to look at there, vcT does have a Harrison Jones in his Taunt Warrior deck, but he doesn't have it in his hand. And he's going into turn 8. He knows Kuonet has been holding onto that card for a long time. It's really hard to make that read. I don't know if he did, because, of course, so many variables to account for. There's a lot of cards that Discover Mage will hold onto their hand. But being able to not deny that Atiesh before he draws into Harrison Jones can be a big deal, but he does have to deal with a 7/7 now.
So I don't think is the biggest deal for him at this point, since his life total has largely been safe, but just simple risk assessment from vcT. It's the earliest that Kuonet could have played Medivh. He probably would have played Medivh, and you don't want your opponent to play Medivh. Those all seem like reasons to play Dirty Rat to me. A lot of extra card draw has been found for Kuonet. Can he make effective use of all the card draw?
A 2-3 and a 7-5.
I mean, no execute in Kuonet's hand as well. Well, perhaps I spoke a bit too soon.
Imagine if he didn't pick up that execute. This board would be tough to deal with. You don't want to brawl this board. You're just putting taunts in the way, which is effectively allowing Kuonet to be the one that dictates how these minions die. Whether that's burn damage, and then of course 7 damage from Medivh goes in the face. Execute saves him a little bit here. He's able to take that damage off the board, and again put Kuonet in a position where he's not really furthering his own gameplay. He's just trying to remove the minions. And vcT on turn 8 is already about to complete the quest.
It's a big deal. Firelands Portal is awfully strong too, though. And Mana Worm alongside it. Now there's multiple threats coming on board for Kuonet. The big problem is the quest progress from vcT. Having the early Stonehill Defender, coining out the Curator, those were big advancements towards that major mark. But the ice blocks can buy Kuonet a lot of time over the course of this game. If a threat sticks to the board, that's where vcT is going to have a problem.
Oh yeah. Mana Worm plus Firelands Portal plus a trade over leaves him with a 2-3 Mana Worm, the 5-drop from the Firelands Portal, and of course a 2-1 Medivh's Valet. He knows there's a Primordial Drake in hand because it's the only dragon for your curator to pick up. But at this point, his board would be relatively resilient to Primordial Drake as long as he doesn't get another big game hunter from this Firelands Portal.
I was right.
Validated Doomsayer.
That is very solid in this matchup. vcT is not checking this immediately outside of some brawl shenanigans, and that will become a 7-7 if vcT doesn't take care of this.
Yeah, you read it there at the start of your turn. Set this minion's attack to 7. That also persists through effects like Aldor Peacekeeper. Put it to 1 attack, and boom. Next turn, it's automatically back up to a 7 attack.
Oh, he's going for brawl, TJ.
If Validated Doomsayer lives from this, then vcT is going to be in a world of hurt. Oh.
The worst minion for Kuonet.
vcT looks up at that sky, he's like, this is my time. Quest complete.
And Kuonet's hand is looking dry. No Alex Strauza. Medivh got pulled. He's drawn so many cards, but he's never been able to find any aggressive action in this game.
He's also used some of his burn spells as well. Fireball, Firelands Portal. Let's take a look at the armor gain. vcT does have double shield block.
Yeah, 2 copies of shield block.
2 copies of Armor Smith.
And 1 copy
of Armor Smith.
Yeah.
Brushing up on my Portuguese.
Kuonet. That look from Kuonet was not one of comfort. Lyra gets found. That could be a huge deal to this game. 2 copies of Frostbolt in hand. He's got secrets to go along with it. This could really change the game.
Now, to be honest, there are a lot of priest cards that don't do too well when slotted into a mage deck, but there are a lot that do slot quite nicely into a mage deck. Mind Blast, Mind Control, Mind Vision.
Well, we're gonna find out.
Mind Anything.
So he's not taking extra value from the Lyra here. He's simply using the Polymorph. And I think I like this line from Kuonet. He does need his burn to actually end this game. Polymorph is a card that's fairly difficult to use in this matchup. It's hard to really think about how valuable priest cards would be at random. And Kuonet played that turn very fast. He gave that very little thought. And to me, that says Kuonet knows the matchup, and he knows if he expends his burn improperly, that things pan out poorly for him.
vcT trying to find a use for Sleep with the Fishes, knowing that there's really not many minions left in the deck, and that's going to be a dead card. Now, one thing to note with that is if he does need additional armor gain, it's going to be a little bit harder for him to find because he expended the Whirlwind, but Kuonet picks up the Alexstrasza.
Wow.
And I didn't even see that card go into the hand before it was played. And he's got a ton of burn. Looking at the damage, he's got 16, 22 points of burn.
And if vcT tries to just simply sit behind a taunt, Mass Dispel found from the Lyra is going to unlock 8 more points of damage for Kuonet if he wants.
I'm really surprised he didn't go for the Sulfuros there, but I think he wants to hold on to that armor up for as long as possible.
And
yeah, rolls
vcT
his eyes.
Rolls his eyes. 14 points of damage. Make that 17 from Kuonet. vcT is suddenly in trouble.
With double shield block, he can go up to 15. With an armor up, he can go up to 17. But that means he's not dealing with the minion on the board if he goes for the most efficient armor ups. And there's still a lot of burn left in the hand from Kuonet. 18 points. Pyroblast, Firelance Portal, Frostbolt. That doesn't even include pings. That doesn't even include potential damage from the Alexstrasza should he not deal with it. But I can't imagine a world where he doesn't.
Look at vcT.
This game changed so quickly. The landscape of that board changed so quickly. One card from Lyra was all he needed, I guess.
It was pretty gosh darn good.
And now with vcT having to hold on to this armor up for longer.
And look, vcT's got to think about the possibility of dying on this turn. At 12, he's not 100% safe in this situation. Kuonet now running out of cards as well. If Kuonet is popped on the Ice Block in Fatigue, or even if he's just set to a low enough life total, Ice Block cannot protect you on your own turn.
So he's also on a clock. I mean, there may be a point now where vcT doesn't even need to play the quest because of the fatigue nature, and he is sweating now. He's seen both fireballs. He can count the burn left in the deck. Firelance Portal, Frostbolt, I think is all that's left.
vcT can go up to 11 this turn. Him foregoing the Sulfuros, even with the life total he had, has absolutely been the correct choice, I think, in this situation.
Smart move.
You know, if he pops that first Ice Block, there's another one he has to go through.
Now he has to count. He has to make sure that he pops that ball.
This is the turn to do it. Kuonet's gonna go into Fatigue next turn. So his goal is to simply pop this Ice Block as low as possible, so that way the second one isn't as effective. It will not protect Kuonet from Fatigue.
Ooh. I don't think that attack was right.
Not in that order. It was not.
So he's at 14. Hero power plus the swing puts him at 2. He attacks him with the Tar Creeper, leaves him at 1.
That's a misstep from vcT.
Now he doesn't gain the extra armor that way, but if he counts the damage, he should have what it takes. But Gluttonous Ooze, that changes things actually. Yeah, so much going on. Because then if he pops the block at 1, then that means he doesn't get the extra armor from the Ally Armorsmith.
Kuonet was at 14, correct?
He was at 14.
8 from the hero power, 4 from the Sulfuros.
And then an attack with the Tar Creeper.
With the Tar Creeper, that's 13, and then pop the Ice Block with... Oh, it makes you immune to the damage.
Yeah, so you don't
that
take
would
the
be
damage.
Okay, so
You don't gain the armor.
I spoke too soon. That was not a calculated attack. He was calculating the amount of damage that Kuonet could deal in that spot.
But if he calculates the damage, he eliminates... He says Firelance Portal Frostbolt. That's 8. He would have been at 9. No ping can come out in that situation.
It's a true story.
If you kill him the next turn, guaranteed. That's tough. But maybe he accounted for Gluttonous Ooze. That's also potential, but now Kuonet.
I don't think he's got the damage to close this. Ally Armorsmith's unchecked.
Ally Armorsmith's unchecked. It's going to gain that additional 2. Ice Block is up. I don't think there's any way he can guarantee a fatigue hit next turn, because if that hero power goes to face,
there's not a way to do that, but I don't think there's a way for Kuonet to actually kill vcT in this spot either.
I think what vcT is trying to do right now is run through his head not only the math of how he's going to win this game, but also what cards remain for Kuonet. I mean, they get a moment before their match. These guys have had longer than the other players to sit down and study the deck list of their opponent because they knew who their quarterfinal matchup was. But I mean, at this point, Kuonet just doesn't have any way to defend, so fatigue's not going to matter. That hero power is going to come out next turn. vcT throws his hands up in the air. He's like, well, I don't know if I can remember everything that's in your hand, but I don't think you have enough damage. Kuonet's going to quickly realize that he does not either. He's going to concede. vcT takes a 2-0 lead. That game got a little bit hectic when that massive spell came out. It was looking close for vcT, but the tech choices in his deck, the double shield block, holding on to the Sulfuros for as long as he did, gained him the life necessary to be able to pull out a win.
You know, I look at that game, and I wonder if there was a spot for Kuonet to perhaps eliminate that ally Armorsmith prior to that turn. Was the shot from the 6-1 as important as perhaps he thought it was? Was the ice block getting popped in a certain situation absolute death if it was a turn earlier? There was a few turns in there, I think, that he could have played a little bit more defensively, although I'm not sure it makes a difference at all how the game pans out due to just him having a limited amount of damage towards the end.
Yeah. Well, here's the reaction from vcT in that matchup. I roll out the Master Spell. Lyra can do some nasty, nasty things.
I've seen a lot of players react this weekend to situations where they have just won the game anyway.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when you're just playing Hearthstone, you play so much that you get into the habit of, anytime my opponent draws the perfect card, I'm going to roll my eyes. But, I mean, other than that, I like the way that vcT played that. The eye roll, I think, was one of the only misplays.
Very patient play from vcT in that game. And that patient play secured him a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, understanding sort of what his win condition was. You know, when to use that Sulfuros, when to go in. Turn where he pops the block. That's the only reason he has to play that Sulfuros. Before that, hold on that armor up. Your opponent's running out of cards, you can count his burn on one hand.
And that's something really to note in that matchup as well, is that Kuonet found Arcane Intellect off of his Primordial Glyphs instead of finding extra burn spells. So while that extra gas helped him find Alexstrasza, helped him find a few key cards, what it didn't do is provide extra damage that his deck normally does not have access to. And the other thing it did was put him into fatigue so early that the ice blocks became much less of an impact than they are sometimes in that situation.
And even after Kuonet got basically a free A damage from the Alexstrasza hit to the face, he still wasn't able to find enough damage.
Double shield block.
Double shield block.
Seen a lot of players cut to one of them in this tournament.
He cut an ally Armorsmith for it, actually. Ally Armorsmith, while it can gain you incremental points of armor throughout the course of the game, its ability to sort of present you with burst armor right when you need it is not as good because you need an activator and you need minions on the board. But let's get into it. What could be the final match of this series? vcT 1 game away, a Paladin win away
And
from booking his spot to Shanghai.
And this is vcT's, this is his sweet spot. Historically over his career, 1,096 Paladin games, he has a 63.6% win rate over his career with this deck.
Oh, yeah. Now, that's no 38,000 games like Fibonacci has on Warrior, but that's still a large sample size to maintain such a high win rate. To put that into perspective, most players across their career, after looking at the stats from all these players in playoffs, usually float around between a 53 and 56% win rate on average across some of their classes and some of their most played classes. So whenever you see a player above 60%, it's impressive. Whenever you see a player above 63%, like vcT has on Paladin, it's incredibly impressive.
This matchup can be an uphill battle for Kuonet at times. He's playing Evolved Shaman, and there are a few things that really make a difference in this game. One of them has already hit the board with Primal Fin Totem. vcT is playing a pure control Paladin deck.
Oh, yeah.
He is not going to get on the ground running quickly. And what that means is every single minion that Kuonet gets on board starts to threaten significant damage alongside Flame Tongue Totem, moving into the Bloodlust turns, finding spots for Evolve. Those are all things that can be very problematic for vcT in this matchup. And he has drawn both Consecrates, which I think is an important card to this matchup. He needs to be able to limit the size of the board for Kuonet at times to keep himself from dying to Bloodlust. But he's got to check stuff like Primal Fin Totem. He doesn't have super effective ways to handle Doppelgangster plus Evolve, outside of Quality and Consecration, of course. Those cards oftentimes will have to be used just to simply clear out board positions. If Kuonet finds strong windows of opportunity, he can really pull ahead. And right now, Flame Tongue Totem is one of those opportunities.
Against decks that don't have ideal starts, this token Evolve Shaman can win games on turn 5. They have a full board of minions, which is actually quite easy to achieve with this deck. With Primal Fin Totem, with the Fireflies, with just all the tokens that they can generate. You pick up Bloodlust on turn 5, you can end the game. And while vcT has a lot of clears, these clears are clunky. They're hard to use.
And it's not even that effective here. It's setting the Flame Tongue to 1 health, setting the Primal Fin to 1 health. He's clearing up the minions that are being made by those cards and then buffed by those same cards.
Yeah.
It would take back-to-back Consecrates here to begin limiting this damage.
And
that would strand the equalities.
Well, Primordial Drake is still a card. He's still got Wild Pyromancers in this deck as well. So one of the things that why Control Paladin sort of made a resurgence, I don't want to say it's the sole thing, but it definitely helped the deck, was the fact that they have so many Equality activators. Equality is rarely as dead of a card as it was in the past, because you have double Consecration, you have double Primordial Drake, and you have double Wild Pyromancer.
Wow.
All right.
So he's setting up for the Consecration on the following turn. But that Consecration is effectively netting vcT 2 damage if this play succeeds.
Wow. Evolve picked up. So there's a chance for Kuonet to play the Evolve to maybe try and get some 3 health minions onto the board.
It could be a play, but with Doppelgangster in hand, that is a bit of a stretch, I'd say, for Kuonet.
I do think that one of the sort of oversights or mistakes, whatever you want to call it, that a lot of players make when they're playing this Evolve Shaman deck is being too greedy with their Evolves. Yes, Doppelgangster plus Evolve is an incredible reload, but sometimes just evolving a board full of plebs gets the job done.
I like Kuonet holding it for the following turn. I think this gives him the strongest setup.
Yeah.
For the long term, because he just saw an Equality, he's about to see a Consecrate. That's going to really limit the counterplay potential from vcT. Now we see he's got a second Equality and a second Consecrate. So given that he actually used that Consecrate prior to this turn, the Equality prior to this turn to set this up, that may be just enough for vcT to start stabilizing in this game.
He's going to be able to get a relatively safe Cairn down on the board as well, which is something that a lot of times you don't have the ability to do in these faster matchups. Oh man, damage for days being picked up. Actually, Wicker Frame Burn Bristle might change things. If Hydrologist picks up, say, Redemption, that Wicker Frame Burn Bristle can represent 8 points of healing.
Certainly can. Really, any of the options, aside from Repentance, I think are fairly effective in this spot. You know, Eye for an Eye, of course, going to be an option that you don't take in this matchup, but you're never going to see 3 dead options from Hydrologist at this stage for vcT. Every single one of them has an impact.
Maelstrom Portal can deny 2 points of healing from vcT, but if he does that, the rest of his turn doesn't feel that great. I guess Flame Tongue Totem is never bad when you have 2+ minions on the board. You'll be able to push some additional damage.
Kuonet is a little bit worried about that secret right now. You know, if it's Redemption, how much is he throwing away if he wants to use Maelstrom Portal? If it's Getaway Kodo, I think he's okay with that, not happy about it.
I mean, 3 mana at this stage in the game for the Paladin player is a crucial amount of real estate, because you need to do a lot of things at once. And Kuonet, I mean, also, you have to figure out what he's thinking about, whether or not he thinks vcT has second Equality clear, because he's seen an Equality and a Consecrate. So will he sort of go in with Doppelgangster plus Evolve.
Well, this is an interesting spot right here for Kuonet. He had the option to put the Flame Tongue alongside the Mana Tide Totem and let the Healing Totem buff up his Light Warden just that little bit much more. But the fact that he got the Light Warden meant the Wicker Flame Burn Bristle buffed it up as well. So vcT is not feeling super comfortable in this position. And Kuonet's trying to force out more board clear prior to using the Doppelgangster and Evolve, and he's going to get it.
Yeah, he's feeling it out, and he's sees the second equality, second consecration. This is going to be a Doppelgangster Evolve, almost 100%. Now, this play has a huge amount of variance. You can blow the game out with some of these 6-drops that you can get. There's also a lot of underwhelming tools. That is very good.
That is not underwhelming. vcT, another eye roll, and you saw him with the prayer hands, hoping this would work out. Devolve in the hand for Kuonet. vcT is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, 6-6.
Another 6-6.
That's the mother load right there.
And the Cabal Trafficker draws a demon at the end of every single turn. If that goes unchecked, that is extra long-term resources for Kuonet.
I had a game the other day on ladder where I was playing and my opponent Doppelgangster evolved at 1 health. Got 2 Dark Arakoas and a Sunwalker. I was sad. It's a very powerful combination that, quite frankly, in a deck that took a long time to develop as a strong deck in the meta.
Kuonet is 1 damage off lethal in this spot with Jade Lightning right now. If he rolls a Spell Power Totem, that would end the game.
I don't think trying to roll for a Spell Power Totem is even a big sacrifice at this point because you still have a ton of options after that.
What to do?
Kuonet is going to take his time.
You can see the red glow around the totem. He's mousing over. What's it going to be?
Not yet.
Not yet, but he's close.
And now the question becomes, do you devolve the Ragnaros Lightlord? Do you take this out? Do you simply push the damage and add Aya alongside board? Again, no equalities left for vcT.
Yeah.
It's difficult for him to make big progress. I like the Stonehill Defender as well. Force the attack from Ragnaros Lightlord. And he's going to devolve as well. That doesn't stop Spike Ridge Steed, though. However, it does set vcT to 5. And setting vcT to 5 means that anytime Kuonet rolls a Spell Power Totem, he ends the game.
Yeah, I think the Spike Ridge Steed isn't even going to be enough. But Wicker Flame Burn Bristle.
Well, that's a big swing in terms of life total.
But how's he ever going to clear this board? That's the question.
That's really the big thing. If Kuonet lands Spell Power, and he does,
there it is.
Game 4. vcT just cannot help but react to the situations.
I mean, to be honest, that seems like a pretty tough matchup unless you get one of those ideal control draws. You're looking for Doomsayers early on. You're looking for that early curve. As early as you can get it. Not able to pick it up. And Kuonet sort of showcasing the power of that token Evolve Shaman. Got a lot of reload. You have to use your clears early on in the game to avoid Bloodlust or just dying out for Flame Tongue Totems. And then all of a sudden you use your last clear, boom, Doppelgangster Evolve. They still have a big board full of 6 mana minions.
It was very wisely played from Kuonet to force the action as much as he could with his little cards. And then as soon as he saw that second equality, bam, Doppelgangster.
There it is. Kuonet, first career HCT appearance. Does have some tournament experience in the past, including a pretty impressive run through the Japan Major just a few weeks ago. Also has a master's degree in computer science.
It's a tough one to get.
It really is. It really is.
I do not have a master's degree in computer science.
I don't have a master's degree in anything.
You have a master's degree in my heart.
Oh. Thanks, Admiral.
Kuonet's looking for that master's degree in Hearthstonery to get to Shanghai.
Well said.
Sick transition.
Well said. As the players get ready for game number 4, vcT still 1 game away. Kuonet got to climb back, but at this stage, it's all about taking it 1 game at a time. You look at the matchup ahead of you, and that's the only thing you look at.
His Mage deck has yet to perform very well in this series. He's lost 2 straight.
2 straight?
Quest Warrior it is.
Quest Warrior versus Control Paladin. Very interesting matchup. Now this Control Paladin, of course, is a N'Zoth Paladin. Both these decks do have some form of inevitability. The Warrior's inevitability comes much quicker in the game. The Paladins comes much later in the game once they get off a big N'Zoth board. vcT keeps Curator in the hand, which is actually a really smart play. Curator in control decks has an insanely high win rate when kept in the mulligan, just because of the fact that it draws you so many resources. You look at later in the game, you're like, oh man, I wish I could draw Curator right now. It'd be the best draw in the deck. Well, what if you kept it in the mulligan? Then you're always gonna have it. In control decks, you're not really looking for that early curve because you don't really have an early curve.
Yeah, oftentimes there's not a lot of pressure presented against you. Depending on the matchup, will a lot of times decide when Curator's kept. Against Quest Warrior is a prime time to keep it since Kuonet's threats are typically very small. Tar Creeper, Stonehill Defender, Alley Armorsmith. They're cards that don't pack a big punch where the damage is concerned. That's one of the reasons why vcT kept the Doomsayers as well. These are cards that are very limited in options as the game moves on. If he can buy any sort of value from it to keep himself safe and try to establish a better board to land Kodo on, say an isolated Alley Armorsmith, those are big benefits for him.
Yeah, Kuonet is going to be able to kill this Doomsayer with double slam plus the Fire War Axe hit. Just trying to protect that Tar Creeper, but I think the biggest thing is just to cycle through his deck to find more taunts. Now, look at vcT's hand. Stampeding Kodo is one of the MVP cards in this matchup because it hits Bloodhoof Brave, it hits Alley Armorsmith, hits a lot of those key impactful cards that come around the same time that Stampeding Kodo does. He also has pretty much all of his big boys. He's got Curator, he's got Tyrion, and he has Ragnaros Lightlord. He's missing N'Zoth for the big Papa Party. But that's about it.
Yeah, an important thing to note in the matchup too is that Kuonet's build for Quest Warrior is, I'd say, a little bit stronger than it typically would be in this matchup. He has no copies of Dirty Rat. He's only got 1 copy of Sleep with the Fishes, and he's got 2 copies of Battle Rage. Being able to draw a significant number of cards as this goes on is a big deal for Kuonet. The fact that he doesn't have potentially dead cards like Dirty Rat, I think, means a lot for him.
One of the ways we've seen these Control Paladin lists defeat Warriors over the past couple of days has been to apply pressure, to get to a point where you're the one who's sort of dictating the pace of the game. We saw Muzzy in his matchup against Stark to qualify for Shanghai. He hit the ground running, just curved out his deck, and was able to apply pressure. And that's pretty much all it takes. That was against Jade Druid, but it's a sort of a similar road when you're talking about control decks in general. A lot of times Warriors will just eventually put a clock on you. I mean, 8 damage per turn that doesn't take a card to do so is a tough thing to get over. And there's that Stampeding Kodo that we talked about.
That is a lot of use from that Stampeding Kodo. Kuonet did play his Bloodhoof Brave first, so he gets to land the Alley Armorsmith afterwards, but vcT's hand is stacked to handle this kind of situation. The amount of armor that Kuonet gains in this matchup isn't nearly as significant as it would be versus Mage, who has a limited amount of burn, as it would be in a mirror match where you're racing to see who gets the final progress towards Sulfuros. In this matchup, that extra life means very little since vcT's goal is to establish giant minions on board and crash in with them turn after turn. That's the situation that's difficult for vcT to handle, and that is not stopping anytime soon.
Ravager Whirlwind, and it looks like Battle Rage. Foregoing the Brawl for this turn, understanding that with a bunch of weak minions on the board, you're not really too worried about removing them. You want to wait for the big stuff to come out. And you can't really pass up the opportunity to draw 4 cards.
vcT, once again, shaking his head. Doesn't like what he sees.
No. I don't like when my opponents draw cards either.
I don't either, but I like when my hand is Curator, Tyrion, Ragnaros Lightlord, Sogoth the Slither, and a way to handle weapons in the future. Seems good to me.
What do I do with all of these big minions? Has to expend the coin here just so his hand doesn't fill up. He's going to pull a Hydrologist, a Primordial Drake, and a Stampeding Kodo. Needed that little bit of extra space. Actually, he didn't need the extra space.
Well, he needed the extra space so he didn't burn on the following turn.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't need it right away.
That's a lot of stuff.
Kuonet's just gonna throw it all out there. 5 out of 7 on the quest. But taking a look at Kuonet's hand, it doesn't have much going for it. No more taunt minions left. A lot of his card draw has been expended as well with both Battle Rages and both Slams. While Brawl's great, I don't know if it's great enough.
Either hit for vcT, I think, was very strong for him with this Kodo. Whether it was the Armor-Smith, whether it was the Bloodhoof Brave, combat ended up about the same. Now he's adding more pressure and getaway Kodos online. And Kuonet's hand is just about out of gas.
Whoa, that is a savior of a draw. That's gonna allow him to get the taunts that he needs to finish the quest, but at this point, with pressure mounting with just these smaller minions, imagine what's gonna happen when vcT starts to play these bigger minions. Public Defender, he's gonna wanna finish his quest this turn, picks the lowest curve taunt that he can to get that Sulfuras rolling.
This is a big turn.
Can these two brawls get the job done?
Well, 8 to face is, I think, a very good start for Kuonet. At this point, isolating minions on board and forcing vcT into a position where he needs to heal up, where he needs to protect himself by going wide on board, that plays right into the pair of brawls that Kuonet has. And so I think for his sake, he's okay if every single one of those goes his face for the rest of the game. If he's trying to win a value battle here, he's not going to win it. vcT has a ton of cards. He's got the hero power to put minions in the way. He's got N'Zoth towards the end of the game to reload.
If I were vcT, I'd heavily consider just not playing anything else. Hero power is not really doing that much, and it's playing into Brawl. He goes ahead and uses it. We'll see just how much of impact that 1/1 has.
Oh my.
Oh my. Another eye roll from vcT. That's a really bad outcome because that guarantees the 8 damage to face once again.
Well, vcT's got to be sweating now. I mean, his hand is so big that it's difficult for him to get multiple threats online at the same time. The Public Defender in the way is going to absorb 2 shots from that Ashbringer. Forbidden Healing, perhaps a reprieve from the damage he's going to face, but this is dangerous territory. It may not look like it, but no one controls those shots except Ragnaros.
No one. Unless you brawl. Then you kind of do.
You kind of do.
So looking at his options here, Primordial Drake allows him to clear off the Public Defender this turn, which can unlock Ashbringer hits to the face in the following turns. But he starts to become pretty susceptible to more rag shots to the face because he's effectively just developing 1 8 health minion.
I like the Shield Bearer take here. He just needs cheap stuff to add to the board to get in the way.
In that case, Redemption.
Repentance does lock out some of the larger minion draws from Kuonet, though.
Yeah.
Reporting for duty.
I'm curious if he's tempted to brawl this spot.
Is that a Primordial Drake picked up? It is.
Oh, mama. Much less tempted at this point, I'd say. However, that Repentance, it's working overtime right now. Really valuing that weapon is Kuonet.
I mean, that could be the setup that he needs to get 8 more damage to the face. Repentance getting some work here with the Primordial Drake, but, I mean, vcT, it just feels like his turns are just so heavy. He plays 1 minion a turn, and that's it. He does have Forbidden Healing, but...
Oh, Ravaging Ghoul is a huge draw right now. Kuonet now gets to wipe out the Primordial Drake.
Set him to 2.
He gets to ensure that this shot goes to face, and he's got a minion in play to threaten damage.
This is coming down to the wire. Ragnaros Lightlord brings him up to 14 if he wants to go for that line of play. But then it gives Kuonet a potential to put him down to 1. It also, with the Ravage Ghoul on board, can eat up the hero power. And then he has basically a shot to 7 to 1 or a shot to kill off the Ragnaros Lightlord. I mean, does he just take the damage from the Ravage Ghoul here and then go for the Ragnaros Lightlord?
That's the thing, is if he goes for the Ragnaros Lightlord in this spot, the Sulfuros attack plus the hero power can kill him.
It can kill him.
That Ravaging Ghoul was a critical draw for Kuonet.
And if you just Forbidden Healing here, in order to get the maximum effect from the heal, it means that you're basically foregoing development. So he can take out the minion here, Forbidden Healing, and he go back up to 23.
vcT is going to take the risk. He's going to 11. Kuonet can limit the board to 1 minion. He gets to hit face for 4 with Sulfuros. Without any extra cards that can affect the board, Kuonet has a 50% chance to end the game this turn.
vcT is breeding aside. Ragnaros Lightlord lives. And it hits
game
face.
5. It's going to be Kuonet draws the perfect card with Ravaging Ghoul to set up a game-winning situation for him, and it comes through.
Wow. But what it's going to come down to is going to be the Mage from Kuonet, which has struggled in this series, as we've seen. Can it overcome the Paladin? That's going to be the big question.
Well, he's teched for aggressive builds in his Mage deck as well for Kuonet. We've talked about the double Volcanic Motion we saw in Killing All Day's list. Kuonet's got that same thing, but he does have a Cabal Courier in as well. But outside of that Cabal Courier, there's not a lot in here that's dedicated to the very late game plans. He doesn't have the Elise, as we saw from vcT's build. That can be a critical card in the matchup for as far as just extra cards are concerned.
Yeah, because this game can go very long with both these decks having a ton of control tools. But vcT, man, he is sweating it. This is reaction after seeing his after seeing his loss in the last game.
It's been turn after turn after turn. vcT continues to react to the unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, he had the realization that it's all going to come down to 1 game. And there's the players right now that are waiting to see who's going to join Muzzy, Diego Diaz, and Ant as the 4th players from the Americas to join them all in Shanghai in July.
1 final game
Whew.
between these two. Kuonet now has to be in a better mindset. When you fall down 0-2 in a series, you're feeling pretty miserable. But when you bring it back to a game 5 from that spot, suddenly the player who is up those 2 games often feels like they're under that pressure. They feel like they're down 2 games in the series after that.
All right, well,
vcT has not been shy about showing his emotions thus far.
let's get into it. Game number 5, vcT on the N'Zoth Paladin and Kuonet on the Discover Mage. No Mana Worm.
No Mana Worm, which means no aggressive starts. vcT does have a pretty reasonable opening here, too. Forbidden Healing, while it's not useful early on, it is a pretty critical card to this matchup. The additional healing that can provide against the burn of Kuonet can oftentimes be a game-winning card. If he's able to force some action from Kuonet with minion pressure, maybe get some Fireballs, some Firelance Portals out of him, healing back for 20 can eliminate the possibility for Kuonet winning some games. But early on, his hand it's very reactive.
Yeah, Hydrologist at the moment for vcT, while it is a 2-drop, oftentimes you don't really know what secret you want. So you're kind of playing in the dark there. A lot of times Hydrologist, you want to come down when you know the board state, you know how the game's panning out. You can choose a secret that helps that game plan. But right now, if you play Hydrologist, you're looking at 3 secrets and you're thinking, how in the world am I going to be able to choose between these 3 secrets?
That's a big thing to talk about, too. Secrets mean a lot of different things in different stages of the game. If he's able to pressure Kuonet down to a low life total, Eye for an Eye becomes a very valuable choice. To force Kuonet to find a way to heal himself prior to delivering those final points of damage if he's low enough. Getaway Kodo or Redemption can duplicate specific minions that you need, have major death rattle effects, perhaps get you extra N'Zoth value as the game goes on.
A couple of key cards for Kuonet in this matchup. Of course, we talked about the Gluttonous Ooze and saw it in both matches so far. Great for taking out Ashbringer. Also True Silver Champion if the board calls for it. He's also got a copy of Polymorph, which in the N'Zoth Paladin is a great choice. Because take out a Karen, take out a Tyrion, all of a sudden you're not only killing that minion, but you're also killing the one that would come out from N'Zoth later on in the game.
Kuonet is just playing faster and faster every turn. Getaway Kodo is fetched for vcT, but Kuonet doesn't bite.
Yeah, he smells blood.
2 to the face, 2 to the face. Eventually that adds up.
Now, Getaway Kodo is interesting here. vcT can try and manipulate the board into getting a good target for that Getaway Kodo, but it's going to be really tough. If we look at the pan out, every time he hero powers, that it runs the risk of just a Fire Blast being able to take out that 1/1 and giving him back a Silverhand Recruit in his hand. If he foregoes that 1/1, it basically tells Kuonet exactly what that secret is. And what it also does is it means he just has one less 1/1.
I think I like Aldor Peacekeeper here because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose both Aldor Peacekeeper and Hydrologist being on the board, you're not too upset about either of those being brought back by Getaway Kodo. The ideal situation would be if vcT could somehow find a way to guarantee Cairn as the minion that gets back from Getaway Kodo. But then if he plays Cairn, he sort of encourages Kuonet to play Polymorph, and then he can get a sheep back in his hand with Getaway Kodo.
Yeah, that's an important tech choice that we haven't talked about either. Kuonet has 1 copy of Polymorph in his deck. Landing that on Tyrion, landing that on Cairn, those are 2 of his big targets in this matchup. I would say more so Tyrion than the Cairn, just due to the Ashbringer that he'd have to face down afterwards. Kuonet's deck isn't able to protect itself forever, and from weapon damage can be one of the more difficult things. Gluttonous Ooze being open to hit a True Silver Champion and then being able to Polymorph Tyrion, it's quite a big deal, and vcT is going to get aggressive here. He just slams down the Wild Pyromancer.
Yeah, and once again foregoes the hero power just because he does not want that brought back by Getaway Kodo. It's going to be a Hydrologist.
Yeah, the order of operations there is if minions die simultaneously while a resummon effect is anywhere, the minions that entered play first will take priority.
vcT preemptively rolled his eyes because of the Polymorph that he's got a gut feeling is waiting in the hands of Kuonet. But there is an interesting decision here. If he does Polymorph this, it means Tyrion has free reign over the board unless he's able to pick up one from Primordial Glyph. In fact, Kuonet may open with a Primordial Glyph here to try and find a second Polymorph effect in order to be able to save that Polymorph for the inevitable Tyrion. Doesn't find it, Polymorphs anyway, but picks up Fireball from the Primordial Glyph.
vcT is not happy about the circumstance.
Let's for a moment, Admirable, count the burn in Kuonet's hand. Given infinite mana, 10 damage from Fire Blast, 10 damage from each of the Firelance Portal, that's 20, 12 from the Fireballs, it's 32, plus the Frostbolt, 35 points of burn damage. Doesn't account for pings. Doesn't account for that odd Mind Blast that comes out of that Cabal Courier.
Doesn't account for Alexstrasza hitting first. He's got a lot of damage.
To be frank, Admirable, it doesn't account for just about anything. And that's why we usually don't count damage.
You and I especially.
Because we're usually wrong.
I don't have an abacus with me. I just don't know how I could count that high. And vcT just has no pressure. 1/1s are not doing a good job at making progress in this spot. If he doesn't pressure Kuonet at all, he doesn't have to take care of his minions. He doesn't have to worry about the chip damage. Just launch burn spells and giddy up.
Reporting for duty.
That's a big Tarim, though.
It's a big Tarim. I mean, that's about as much pressure as he could hope for in this situation, trying to take some of that pressure off of his face.
And there's Blood Mage too, but it's additional damage there. Kuonet has to pay some attention to the board now, though. He is starting to approach the dangerous territory where True Silver Champion and Consecration those extra few points of damage, but does he have enough in the tank right now to just start launching burn spells? I mean, when you're sitting behind an ice block, you have this much burn, and you have a second ice block, it's very tempting to go for just game-ending damage. vcT, however, has Forbidden Healing in hand.
Also has Ragnar's Light Lord. He's got a ton of healing in hand. So if Kuonet just sort of goes willy-nilly, all this damage to the Facility, then he's going to be very sad when all of this healing comes out and basically use that burn for nothing and expended all those resources for nothing. But, I mean, he does have burn for days, so.
The thing about it is that this was just a large risk that Kuonet took in this position. Again, he is forcing vcT to have the right cards at the right time. vcT's trading over the Peddler there in fear of Meteor.
I guess Meteor, but also, I don't know if you can leave that minion. Yeah, I guess Meteor is it. Blood Mage Thalnos coming down here.
How much damage is this? 7, 14, 18 damage with the coin.
That's it.
vcT foregoing healing with the Ragnaros Light Lord here. Kuonet has the exact cards, and vcT can't believe it. Kuonet is going to reverse sweep vcT and find himself going to Shanghai.
With the coin, is able to fit in the extra spell and the spell power from the Blood Mage Thalnos. I said this is why we don't count damage admirable, and we didn't even listen. Kuonet is going to Shanghai.
Unreal.
vcT, he was shocked. He didn't even account for that. I mean, you can't really, that fireball, the second fireball came from the Primordial Glyph. Insane ending to that series. Kuonet, with the weak link from the Mage, gets there. And there you go, Shanghai bound.
First playoff performance in Americas. He was top 6 of the APAC Winter Preliminaries, and since then has not had a string of tournaments to get to this point. His very first playoffs, his very first top 8, his very first going to Shanghai. What a reaction.
Yeah, and he is pumped.
Rightfully so.
Man, what a setup from him, too. Firelance Portal of the Face to set up exact lethal with Blood Mage, Fireball, Fireball, Frostbolt. And there's the lineup that Americas is sending to Shanghai. Muzzy, Diego Diaz, Ant, and Kuonet. Wow. A couple of newcomers. We do have a South American representative. And we also have Muzzy, who was a player, a long-time storied player from way back in the day. Number 1 point earner last year, number 1 point earner for the spring season this year. Insane.
Yeah, and Ant as well, looking for another opportunity to find himself at a World Championships. In 2014, he wasn't quite able to get it done at Hammerstein.
Yeah.
But now he's headed to Shanghai. He's got a couple more players to face there if he's going to find himself at the World Championships. Yeah,
now we'll go ahead and bring in Raven and Soddle, who were desperately trying to shout lethal at me and Admirable.
Lethal! It's lethal!
That we did not spot. I was wondering why Soddle was waving his arms in the air. But boy, what an insane ending to that game.
Yeah, I do really want to talk about it because the way he sequenced it was so perfect because it left him above that magical 15 number where you feel like you have to heal, but he hadn't accounted for that extra Primordial Glyph card, which could have been a Frostbolt or a Fireball to make that combination happen. So beautiful out. Like, he went straight damage. That was all his hand did. Like, what else was he supposed to do with a handful of Fireballs, Pyroblasts, and Firelands Portals? But he found a way to even potentially beat healing by lulling his opponent into that comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think it must have been actually, looking back on it, heartbreaking for vcT because he had Forbidden Healing, he had Ragnaros. He could have just played one of them that turn. Obviously, but getting burst down from that much is quite the stretch. But as you said, the Glyph card, the fact that he was just going so aggressive with damage anyway, well, if you heal past that, you've got to think outside Alexstrasza, then you've got to be safe.
And I think that's exactly what he's thinking about in that spot, too, is if I use the Ragnaros Light Lord now, and then I see Alexstrasza, where does this damage go? Right. But if he sees Alexstrasza, he still has the Ragnaros Light Lord.
Lives, yeah.
But, he's seen the Glyph card happen. There's been turn after turn where it hasn't been, like, clean removal for his board, for example, so you're kind of pegging it on burst at that point. Really difficult situation. That is the joy of Hearthstone. We can break that play down for hours. Who knows what the right line was? But
for now,
the right line for all of these players is all the way to Shanghai. Muzzy, Diego Diaz, Ant, and Kuonet, who we just saw pick up that big win.
Yeah, all these quarterfinal matches are the key qualifying matches to the championships. As you said, we see the 4 core players, but they are still going to be playing on to become the America's Spring Playoff champion. And that's definitely a title no one, everyone wants to go for to a large extent. You could say they've done the hard bit, qualifying for championships, but this is still a great title to go for and very important to a lot of these players, I imagine.
Yeah, and crucially, in the game that we'll be bringing you in just a little moment, Muzzy versus Diego Diaz, Muzzy not only playing for that title and the prestige, also playing to be the one and only player to go through and become champion with an entirely undefeated record through one of these playoffs.
Yeah, and that would have been absolutely crazy if that happened as well. And he's got a reasonable chance. Our matchup's actually going to be a rematch coming up from Swiss, and he actually beat Diego Diaz out anyway in the Swiss round, so we're hoping to repeat that performance, and that puts him one step closer to that flawless victory in terms of playoffs.
Yeah, and I really like Muzzy's lineup. I obviously love Muzzy as a player. We know he's got the chops when it just comes to technical Hearthstone ability, but I love the lineup that he's put together. It's along that lines of the Chucky Amnesiac lineup that we just saw fall a little bit short for those players, but the addition of that Miracle Rogue over the Priest is such a beautiful twist that's just kind of pushing him over the line.
Yeah, really cool to see that deck played out. TJ, do you think Muzzy's got what it takes to go all the way?
I do. I really do. I think that it's Muzzy's time. And, I just want to go back to that last series for a moment and mention, and never a tournament goes by where me and Admirable don't miss a lethal at least once, but you do have to give us some credit. We did count all that damage in his hand.
Yeah, you did.
You did sit and count.
Hell yeah, we did. Yeah.
It's tough. Right. 5 by 5 by 6 by 3. Eventually we got there.
Eventually we got there, but all that matters is Kuonet got there, and he got it. But one thing's